It started with a splash of water on my husband's tablet. What it revealed shattered my entire world, exposing a meticulously hidden experiment where I was the baseline, and my own sister was a subject. It started, as most disasters do, with something completely ordinary. I was washing the dishes from dinner, humming along to a cheesy 80s playlist I had on the little speaker by the window. The warm water felt good on my hands, a familiar comfort at the end of a long day. Mark, my husband of 8 years, was on a work call in his home office, his voice a low, serious murmur from the other end of our house. It was a typical Tuesday night, a perfectly painted picture of domestic bliss. The last pot, the one we'd made spaghetti bolognese in, was a real monster. I was scrubbing at a particularly stubborn bit of burnt sauce when my soapy hand slipped. A wave of sudsy water arced through the air, a perfect glittering parabola of doom that landed directly on Mark's tablet, which was propped up on its stand on the kitchen counter. My heart leaped into my throat. I dropped the pot back into the sink with a loud clang. "No, no, no," I whispered, grabbing the nearest dish towel. Mark loves that tablet more than he loves our ficus tree, and he really loves that ficus tree. He calls it his second brain. It's always with him. At the dinner table, on the couch, even in the bathroom, a fact I've teased him about relentlessly. He just laughs and says he can't risk missing a critical work email. He's a software developer for a big tech firm, so his life is a constant stream of code, deadlines, and notifications. I've always respected his work ethic, even if it meant sharing our sofa with a glowing rectangle. My hands were shaking as I frantically wiped the screen. It wasn't drenched, just speckled with water droplets. But modern touch screens are ridiculously sensitive. As my towel swiped across the glass, the screen flickered to life. It was unlocked. Mark rarely left it unlocked, but he must have been using it just before his call and forgotten to lock it. I saw his home screen, a picture of us on our honeymoon in Italy, smiling and sun-kissed. My panic started to subside. It looked fine. No fizzing, no black screen of death. I dodged a bullet. I was about to press the lock button on the side when my thumb, still slightly damp, slid across a blank area of the screen. I was trying to get a better grip, but the motion registered as a swipe. And that's when it happened. In the split second my thumb dragged, a folder I had never seen before shimmered into existence. It wasn't like his other folders, which were neatly labeled work, finance, games. This one was different. It had a generic default blue folder icon, but its name was just a string of characters, XJ7. It looked less like a name and more like a password or a serial number. It appeared for a second. Then, as if realizing it had been seen, it vanished again. I froze, the dish towel still in my hand. Did I just imagine that? My heart was thumping again, but for a completely different reason. It wasn't panic anymore. It was a cold, sharp spike of something else. Curiosity? Dread? I tried to replicate the gesture, dragging my thumb across the same empty spot. Nothing. I tried again, a little to the left. Nothing. I felt a flush of foolishness. I was letting my imagination run away with me. It was probably just a graphical glitch caused by the water. I told myself to lock it. Just lock the tablet, put it back exactly where it was, and pretend nothing happened. It was his private device. I trusted Mark. I had no reason not to. We told each other everything. Our marriage was built on a foundation of honesty and open communication. Snooping was a line I would never, ever cross. But my hand wouldn't move to the lock button. The image of that folder was burned into my mind. XJ7. It felt deliberate. It felt hidden. Why would Mark hide a folder? And why use such a cryptic name? All my rationalizations started to crumble. Maybe it was a surprise for me? Plans for an anniversary trip? A folder of gift ideas? My brain desperately offered up innocent explanations, but none of them felt right. You don't hide a surprise vacation in a folder named like a piece of military hardware. You hide secrets. A cold dread began to pool in my stomach. The low murmur of Mark's voice from his office suddenly sounded different, more distant, like he was a stranger in my house. I thought about the last few months. He'd been working late more often. He'd been more protective of his phone, angling it away from me when he texted. When I'd asked, he'd just sighed and said it was a high-pressure project at work, that his boss was a nightmare. I'd accepted it without question. I'd made him his favorite meals. I'd given him back rubs. I'd told him it would all be okay. I was being a supportive wife. But what if I was being a naive one? My hand trembled as I lifted it to the screen. I felt like a trespasser, a betrayer. This was wrong. I knew it was wrong. But the not knowing felt worse. I had to know what was in that folder. With a final shaky breath, I swiped my thumb across the screen again, this time with perfect, deliberate slowness. It appeared. XJ7. My finger hovered over it, a millimeter from the glass. My whole life, our whole life together, felt like it was balanced on this one tiny, stupid decision. I closed my eyes and tapped. The folder opened. There was no password protection, no further security. It was just open. Inside, there were no documents or photos. There were just more folders, 4 of them, and their names were not cryptic at all. They were names. Names of women. The first folder was labeled Chloe, the second Sophia, the third Isabel. My blood ran cold. Who were these women? Colleagues? Ex-girlfriends? My mind raced, trying to find a logical, harmless reason. But then I saw the name of the 4th folder, the one that made the air leave my lungs in a silent, gut-wrenching gasp, the one that made the entire world tilt on its axis. The 4th folder was named Anna. Anna is my sister. The world didn't just tilt, it shattered. For a moment I couldn't breathe. The name just hung there on the screen, pulsing with a sick, neon glow in my vision. Anna, my sister, my younger sister, who I'd taught to ride a bike and helped with her college applications. The one who called Mark her favorite brother-in-law and came over for movie nights every other Friday. The tablet felt impossibly heavy in my hands, a slab of cursed glass. The sound of Mark's calm, professional voice drifting from his office was a grotesque counterpoint to the violent chaos erupting in my chest. My finger moved before my brain could stop it. It was like watching someone else's hand, detached and morbidly curious, as it hovered over the folder labeled Anna. I had to know. I think a part of me, a small, desperate part, was still praying for an innocent explanation. Maybe it was a surprise party they were planning for me? A shared gift? Any flimsy, pathetic reason would do. I tapped the folder. It wasn't a surprise party. It wasn't a torrent of sordid photos or explicit messages. Not at first. It was worse. It was a meticulously curated archive of a life. Her life. There were photos, dozens of them. Mark and Anna at a coffee shop I didn't recognize, her head thrown back in laughter at something he'd said. Mark and Anna at the Botanical Gardens, a place she loves, him holding her hand to help her over a stepping stone. A picture taken at our last family barbecue, one I was also at. I remembered that day. I'd been busy with the grill and they had wandered off to get more ice. The photo was a selfie of the 2 of them by the lake, his arm slung casually around her shoulder, their heads close together, sharing a secret smile meant only for each other. I felt a wave of nausea so powerful I had to brace myself against the counter. Beneath the photos were text files. I clicked on the most recent one. The document that opened wasn't a love letter. It was a log. It was dated entries, written in Mark's detached, analytical tone. Date: last Friday. Subject: a demonstrated increased emotional reliance. Initiated conversation about her struggles at her new job, a known vulnerability. Response was positive. She sought physical comfort, hug, hand-holding, which was provided. She is less guarded than Subject S, but more emotionally volatile than Subject C. Subject A, Subject S, Subject C, Chloe, Sophia. My mind was spinning. This wasn't a series of affairs. This was some kind of experiment. I scrolled up, my eyes scanning the text frantically. Note: Subject A shares many aesthetic preferences with the baseline, but her decision-making process is more impulsive. This could be a liability or an exploitable trait. Continue to monitor her reactions to unexpected schedule changes. The baseline. What the hell was the baseline? My gaze darted back to the open folders on the side of the screen. Chloe, Sophia, Isabel, Anna. 4 subjects. I scrolled through the document in Anna's folder, a clinical, chilling dissection of my sister's personality, her hopes, her fears. He had listed her favorite movies, the childhood memory that always made her cry, her insecurity about her art. He knew her. He had studied her like a scientist studies a lab rat, and she had let him in, trusted him, this predator disguised as her brother-in-law. The betrayal was so profound, so multi-layered, it was like being stabbed from 2 directions at once. My husband, my sister, the 2 of them, a team, a disgusting secret team. How long had this been going on? How could I have been so blind? Every late night at work, every boys' night out, every secretive text message now played back in my mind, colored a sickly, venomous green. Suddenly, I heard the creak of Mark's office chair through the wall. His voice changed, becoming lighter, friendlier. "All right, thanks everyone. I'll have that report over by morning. Talk soon." The call was ending. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through my shock. I had to close everything, erase my digital footprints. My fingers, clumsy and shaking, fumbled with the screen. I tapped the back arrow, landing on the main XJ7 folder again. The 4 names stared back at me, an unholy sisterhood of the deceived. I had to get out. I swiped up to close the application, but my trembling thumb missed, instead scrolling the screen down just a fraction. And that's when I saw it. It wasn't a folder. It was a single file at the very bottom of the list, almost hidden, a video file. It didn't have a woman's name. Its title was simple, direct, and it stopped my heart cold. It was labeled Lena Sleep Study 01. My own name. I was the baseline. My finger jabbed at the screen out of pure, horrified reflex. The video opened and began to play. It was me. I was in our bed, fast asleep, the covers pulled up to my chin. The video was shot in night vision, casting the familiar scene of our bedroom in an eerie green glow. It was clearly filmed from a hidden camera, positioned somewhere high up in the corner of the room. I watched myself, a vulnerable stranger on the screen, breathing softly, completely unaware. I felt violated on a level I didn't know was possible. But it wasn't the image of me sleeping that made me want to scream. It was the timestamp in the bottom corner of the video. It was from 2 nights ago. Then, from the office down the hall, I heard it. The click of his door handle. Footsteps were coming down the hall. He was coming. My blood turned to ice. The footsteps were unhurried, casual, the familiar sound of my husband walking through our home. But now they sounded like the approach of a monster. I jabbed a finger at the screen, my mind screaming, "Close it! Close it! Close it!" The video of my sleeping form vanished, replaced by the file list. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Back, close. My thumb swiped frantically, and the XJ7 folder disappeared. I slammed the lock button on the side of the tablet just as Mark rounded the corner into the kitchen. He was smiling. "Longest call ever," he said, stretching his arms over his head. I thought my ears were going to start bleeding. "What's for dessert?" I couldn't speak. I was standing frozen, my back to the counter, clutching the dish towel in one hand and the tablet in the other. I hoped the shadows in the kitchen hid the tremor in my hands, the wild panic in my eyes. The face I knew so well, the kind eyes, the easy smile I had fallen in love with, now looked like a mask, a carefully constructed lie. Who was this man? What was this man? "Lena, you okay?" His smile faltered slightly, a flicker of concern crossing his features. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a breath into my lungs. "Just tired," I managed to croak out. My voice sounded thin and reedy, a stranger's voice. "Long day." I placed the tablet back on its stand, my movements stiff and robotic. I prayed he wouldn't notice my clammy handprint on the screen. He walked over and wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. I flinched, a full-body recoil I couldn't suppress. He went still. The warmth of his body, usually a comfort, felt like a cage. "Whoa," he said softly, his voice low in my ear. "Everything really okay, honey? You're wound up tighter than a drum." "Get a grip, Lena. Act normal." "Sorry," I mumbled, trying to relax my rigid shoulders. I was scrubbing that stupid pot and I splashed your tablet. I thought I broke it." It was the perfect excuse, a life raft of truth in an ocean of lies. He chuckled, the sound vibrating through my back. "Is that all? Honey, it's waterproof. You could dunk the whole thing in the sink and it'd be fine." He squeezed me gently and then let go, walking over to inspect the device. My heart stopped. He picked it up, swiped it on, and his face appeared on the lock screen. He tapped in his passcode. I held my breath, waiting for the explosion, for him to see that an app had been recently opened, for some digital breadcrumb I'd left behind. But nothing happened. He just opened his email, scrolled through it for a second, and then set the tablet back down. "See? Good as new. Don't worry about it." He turned back to me, his brow still furrowed with a hint of worry. "You really scared me for a second there." "You scared me?" The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. He, this meticulous puppet master, was worried about me. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. I had to get out of the kitchen. I needed space. I needed to think. "I think I'm just going to, head up to bed," I said, untying my apron. "I have a bit of a headache." "Oh, okay." He looked disappointed. "I was hoping we could watch that new movie tonight." "So you can study my reactions? Log my emotional responses to a plot twist?" The thought was venomous. "Maybe tomorrow," I said, my voice flat. I didn't kiss him goodnight. I couldn't bring myself to do it. I just walked past him, up the stairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. Once in our bedroom, I closed the door and leaned against it, finally letting out the shaky breath I'd been holding. The room looked the same, but it felt tainted. Violated. My eyes darted to the corner where the ceiling met the wall, searching for the lens, the tiny blinking eye that had been watching me. I couldn't see anything, but I knew it was there. I was a specimen in my own home. My marriage wasn't a partnership. It was a long-term observational study. The baseline. And Anna. Oh God, Anna. My sister was another subject. Was she a willing participant? The way he wrote about her demonstrated increased emotional reliance, known vulnerability. It sounded like manipulation, like he was preying on her. He was using her trust, her affection for him as her brother-in-law to get, what? Data. I had to warn her. But how? If I called her now, hysterical, what would I even say? "Hi, Anna. I think my husband, your brother-in-law, is a sociopath who is running a psychological experiment on us and has hidden cameras in my bedroom?" She'd think I was having a breakdown. And what if Mark found out I knew? The man who had created this elaborate secret world was not someone to be trifled with. He was methodical, calculating. I had no idea what he was capable of if he felt his project was threatened. I sank onto the bed, my mind racing. I needed proof. Hard, undeniable proof that I could show my sister, the police, anyone. The tablet. It was all on the tablet. But it was password protected now, and I didn't know the code, and even if I did, I couldn't risk him catching me with it again. Then I remembered the video. Lena Sleep Study 01. The camera. The camera was my proof. If I could find it, I could expose all of this. I started scanning the room again, my eyes tracing every surface. The bookshelf, the smoke detector, the top of the wardrobe. It had to be small, easily hidden. I heard the downstairs TV click on. He was settling in to watch the movie without me. This was my chance. I got on my hands and knees, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I checked under the bed, behind the curtains. Nothing. I climbed onto a chair to inspect the top of the bookshelf, running my fingers along the dusty surface. Still nothing. Frustration and despair began to bubble up. I was running out of time, out of places to look. I sat back down on the edge of the bed, my head in my hands. Where would a methodical, clever man hide a tiny camera? Somewhere with a power source. Somewhere unobtrusive. Somewhere you would never think to look twice. My eyes fell on the digital alarm clock on my bedside table. It was a newer model Mark had bought a few months ago. He'd said our old one was unreliable. It had a sleek black face and a USB port in the back for charging phones. It was always plugged in. And it was pointed directly at my side of the bed. My breath hitched. With a trembling hand, I reached over and picked it up. It felt slightly heavier than an alarm clock should. I turned it over, my fingers searching for a seam, a tiny pinhole, anything. There, on the dark, reflective front panel, almost invisible unless the light hit it just right, was a tiny, perfectly round circle. No bigger than the head of a pin. It was the lens. A gasp escaped my lips. This was it. This was the proof. I had him. I turned the clock over again, looking for a memory card slot, some way to get the footage. In the back, next to the power cord, was a tiny panel, the kind you have to pry open with a fingernail. My nail scraped against the plastic. It was stuck. I needed something to pry it with. My eyes scanned the tabletop. A nail file. I grabbed it, my hands shaking so badly I could barely aim the metal tip. I wedged it into the seam and pried. The small plastic cover popped off and clattered onto the nightstand. And inside, I saw not one, but two things. One was a tiny micro SD card, which I expected. The other was a small silver tracking device with a faint, pulsing blue light. It was identical to the one I had just put on my keychain a week ago. Mark had given it to me. He'd said it was so I'd never lose my keys again. The pulsing blue light seemed to synchronize with the frantic thumping in my chest. A tracker. He wasn't just watching me in my sleep. He was tracking my every move. The gift, his thoughtful gesture to help his forgetful wife, was a leash. My keys were in my purse, downstairs on the entryway table. Was it active now? Could he see, from an app on his phone, that the keys were currently in the master bedroom, right where I was supposed to be? A fresh wave of violation washed over me, so potent it made me dizzy. My home wasn't a sanctuary, it was a laboratory. My bedroom wasn't a private space, it was an observation deck. My keychain wasn't a convenience, it was a manacle. Every piece of my life, every routine and interaction had been compromised. He hadn't just been observing me. He had been building a cage around me, bar by invisible bar. I had to get the memory card. That was the priority. The tracker was horrifying, but the card held the visual evidence, the irrefutable proof of his sick experiment. My fingers, numb and clumsy, fumbled in the tiny compartment. I managed to press the edge of the micro SD card and it clicked, popping out of its spring-loaded slot. I pinched it between my thumb and forefinger, a tiny black square that held the key to blowing his whole world apart. It felt like holding a live grenade. Now what? I couldn't just leave the clock with its back panel missing. He would know I'd been in it. He was meticulous. He would notice. I quickly snapped the plastic cover back into place, the click sounding like a gunshot in the silent room. I put the clock back on the nightstand, positioning it at the exact same angle it had been before. Then I clutched the tiny memory card in my fist, my knuckles white. I needed a plan. I couldn't confront him, not yet. Not until I knew the full scope of this. I had the video of me sleeping, but what else was on this card? And what was in the other folders? Chloe, Sophia, Isabel. Who were they? Were they in danger? Did they know they were being watched, studied, and cataloged like butterflies pinned to a board? And my sister... I had to get to Anna, but I had to do it smartly. A panicked phone call was out of the question. For all I knew, he was monitoring our communications too. I needed to see what was on this card. My laptop was downstairs, in my bag. I could sneak down, get it, and lock myself in the bathroom. I crept to the bedroom door and pressed my ear against the wood. I could hear the faint sounds of the movie from the living room action movie explosions and dramatic music. He was distracted. Holding my breath, I turned the knob with agonizing slowness, wincing at the soft click of the latch. I slipped out into the darkened hallway and moved like a ghost down the stairs, my feet silent on the carpeted runner. My purse was on the little table by the door. I could see the glow of the television flickering from the adjacent living room. I crept toward my purse, my heart in my throat. I just needed the laptop. I could leave the purse, leave the keys with the tracker, and he'd be none the wiser. I reached the table. My fingers closed around the strap of my laptop bag, which was tucked inside my larger tote. I started to slowly, carefully pull it out. Looking for something? Mark's voice cut through the darkness. It wasn't loud, but it was so close it made me yelp and spin around. He was standing right there, not in the living room, but in the doorway to the kitchen, shrouded in shadow. He wasn't holding a drink or a snack. He was holding his tablet. Its screen was off, but he held it like a weapon. You scared me," I stammered, my hand flying to my chest. My other hand, the one holding the memory card, was clenched into a tight fist behind my back. I couldn't sleep. I was going to get my laptop and do some work. My voice was shaking. The lie was flimsy, pathetic. He didn't move from the doorway. He just watched me, his face an unreadable mask in the dim light. The silence stretched on, thick and heavy with unspoken accusations. The explosions from the TV in the next room sounded a million miles away. "You've been acting strange all evening, Lena," he said, his voice unnervingly calm. "Ever since I came out of my office." He took a slow step forward, out of the shadows and into the dim light of the hallway. "You splashed my tablet, didn't you?" "Yes, I told you that," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I panicked. I thought I'd broken it." "Right," he said, but the single word was laced with disbelief. He took another step. We were only a few feet apart now. "The thing is, I have a security log on that device. It tells me whenever certain files are accessed, especially files that are sensitive." My blood froze. It was a trap. Of course it was a trap. He was a software developer. Of course he had security logs. I had walked right into it. The cool, smooth edges of the memory card dug into my palm. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, backing away a step. My back hit the entryway table. I was cornered. His eyes, cold and calculating, flickered down to my hand, the one clenched tight behind my back. A slow, chilling smile spread across his face. It was not the smile I knew. It was the smile of a scientist who had just confirmed his hypothesis. "I think you do," he said softly. "I think you found my project. And I have to say, Lena, I'm very disappointed. You've contaminated the control group." He took a final step forward, closing the distance between us. His hand shot out, not for me, but for the wall beside the front door. He flicked a switch I'd never seen before, a small, unlabeled rocker switch hidden behind a framed photo of our wedding day. With a heavy, metallic thud, a deadbolt I didn't know existed shot into place at the top of the front door. Another one slammed shut at the bottom. He wasn't just a scientist, he was a zookeeper, and he had just locked me in the enclosure. The sound of the deadbolts locking echoed the final, slamming shut of a door in my mind, the illusion of my life, my marriage, my home. It all evaporated in that metallic thud. I was trapped with a monster who viewed me as a contaminated specimen. My panic, however, was suddenly eclipsed by a surge of pure, cold adrenaline. He thought I was a frightened lab rat. He was about to find out he was wrong. "What do you want, Mark?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. I brought my clenched fist out from behind my back, holding it up between us. The tiny memory card was my only bargaining chip. To what? Delete your project? Pretend this never happened? He actually laughed, a short, humorless sound. Delete it? Lena, this is my life's work. You can't possibly comprehend the scope, the patterns, the predictability of human emotional response when subjected to specific stimuli. It's beautiful. You, the baseline, were perfect. So stable, so predictable. Until now. His eyes narrowed. Just give me the card. No, I said, taking a half step back towards the staircase. I'm calling the police. I'm calling my sister. Your sister? He smiled that chilling smile again. Subject A is already on her way over. I sent her a text from your phone about 10 minutes ago while you were upstairs searching my alarm clock. A simple 911. Come now, Mark is hurting me. She's very impulsive, your sister, especially when she thinks someone she cares about is in danger. The blood drained from my face. He was luring Anna here, into this cage. He wasn't just trying to contain the damage. He was setting up a new experiment. My contamination, Anna's reaction, it was all just more data for him. You're insane, I whispered. No, I'm thorough, he corrected me. He took a step towards me, his hand outstretched. The card, Lena. Now. Don't make this difficult. I had only seconds. My mind raced, grabbing onto the one piece of information I had that he didn't know I possessed. His own words from his log. Anna is less guarded than Subject S, but more emotionally volatile than Subject C. Her decision-making process is more impulsive. He saw her impulsiveness as a weakness, a trait to be exploited. I saw it as my only hope. She wouldn't call the police first. She would come straight here, heart pounding, ready to fight for me. But she would be walking into a trap. I had to warn her. My eyes darted around the entryway. My purse was on the floor where I dropped it. My phone was in it. He'd used it, but he must have put it back. As he lunged for me, I didn't run up the stairs. I ducked, spinning away from him and diving for the purse. My fingers scrambled inside, past my wallet and lipstick, closing around the cool metal of my phone. Mark grabbed my arm, his grip like iron. "Give me that!" he snarled, his mask of calm finally cracking. I twisted in his grip, my thumb already swiping and tapping, my fingers flying across the screen with a muscle memory born of years of texting. It wasn't a text I was sending. It was a tweet. I had a small private Twitter account I used to follow artists and writers, one he didn't know about. I typed a frantic, jumbled message. Mark's experiment, XJ7, Chloe, Sophia, Isabel, Anna. He's watching, tracking. Camera and clock. Trapped. Don't come in. I hit send, tagging Anna's public Twitter handle. It was a long shot. Would she even see it in time? Mark wrenched the phone from my grasp, his face contorted with rage. He saw what I'd done. "You stupid woman," he roared, throwing the phone against the wall. It shattered, the screen spiderwebbing into 1,000 pieces. He had me pinned against the wall now, one hand gripping my wrist, the other reaching for the fist that still held the memory card. "It's over, Mark," I gasped, struggling against him. "It's online. Everyone will see it." "Nobody will believe a hysterical tweet," he hissed, his face inches from mine. "I'll tell them you're having a psychotic break. I have months of video evidence of your instability. I've been documenting everything." Of course he had. He had a narrative for every contingency. But he'd underestimated my sister. And he'd underestimated me. As his fingers pried at my fist, I did the only thing I could think of. I opened my hand and popped the tiny memory card into my mouth. I swallowed it. It went down with a hard, painful scratch, but it was down. His face was a mask of pure disbelief. For a split second, he was so stunned he loosened his grip. That was all the opening I needed. I brought my knee up with all my might, connecting with a brutal, satisfying crunch. He howled in pain and doubled over, giving me the space to break free. I scrambled for the kitchen, not to escape, but for a weapon. My hand closed around the heaviest thing on the counter, the cast iron skillet I'd left to dry. Just as I turned, skillet in hand, The headlights of a car swept across the front windows. Anna. She was here. "Anna, no!" I screamed, running from the kitchen towards the front door, the heavy skillet feeling like a righteous extension of my arm. Mark was already recovering, staggering to his feet. He saw the headlights too, and a look of manic purpose crossed his face. He moved to block the door. "Perfect," he breathed. "The final test begins." The doorbell rang, a frantic, insistent peal. Lena, open up. Are you okay?" Anna's panicked voice was muffled through the heavy door. "Stay back, Anna," I shouted, my voice cracking. "It's a trap!" Mark lunged at me, trying to wrestle the skillet away. We struggled, a desperate, clumsy dance in the entryway. He was stronger, but I was fueled by a primal fury he had never bothered to log in his data. The doorbell stopped. There was a pause, and then the sound of splintering wood as Anna threw her shoulder against the door. My sister, impulsive and brave and coming to save me. The distraction was enough. As Mark's head turned towards the sound of the straining door, I swung the heavy skillet with every ounce of strength I had. It connected with the side of his head with a sickening thud. He crumpled to the floor, unconscious. The door burst open, a piece of the frame splintering away. Anna stood there, her chest heaving, her phone in her hand. Her face was pale with fear, but it hardened when she saw the scene. Me, standing with a skillet and her brother-in-law unconscious on the floor. "I got your tweet," she panted, her eyes wide. "I called the police on the way. They're 2 minutes out." Tears of relief streamed down my face. I dropped the skillet, the clang echoing in the silent house. Anna rushed to me and we clung to each other, two sisters against the wreckage of the lives we thought we had. When the police arrived, it was chaos, but it was a righteous chaos. Mark, now awake and handcuffed, was terrifyingly calm, already starting his narrative about my mental breakdown. But his story fell apart. Anna had my tweet. I had the tracker from my keys. And I told them exactly where to find the camera in the alarm clock. The final, damning piece of evidence, I explained, was currently making its way through my digestive system. But I would be more than happy to provide it to them in a day or two. Faced with physical evidence and 2 coherent witnesses, his facade of the concerned husband crumbled into the pathetic rantings of a caught criminal. They found his tablet, and even without the password, it was enough. The investigation that followed uncovered everything. Chloe, Sophia, and Isabel were found. They were all women from Mark's past. A college classmate, a former co-worker, an old acquaintance who he had reconnected with under false pretenses, manipulating them into his sick, psychological game. Our story gave them the courage to come forward. It turns out the YouTube channel I love to watch now has a new video. It's a dramatic Reddit-style story narrated by a woman with a calm, strong voice. It's about a husband who thought he could control everything, who believed human emotion was just data to be collected. It's about a Tuesday night, a splash of water, and a hidden folder. It's about how this man, this meticulous scientist, made one crucial error in his calculations. He forgot to account for the unbreakable bond between 2 sisters. He forgot to account for me.